Oh, I think I've done it. Yay, did it. Okay, let's hope everybody comes back to join me. Oh, there we are. There we are. Okay. Hello. Hello, hello. Right, comments. Where is everybody? Oh, not that one. That's the chat overlay. Oh, there we are. Ah, thank you. Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming back to me. Honestly, technology is going to get the better of me, but I figured out why I wasn't looking right, and now I've got myself sorted. It was only a button I needed to press. Hello, Patricia. Hi, Emma. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for being patient there. Honestly, I've been practicing all morning and it was all looking fine. So as soon as I pressed live, it all went to pot and I couldn't work out why. Anyway, I think I've got it sorted. Hi, Pat. How are you? Okay. Let's see if I can get my comments on Facebook as well. Hi, Dawn. Right. Not without his teething problems again this morning, Dawn, but I think I've got it sussed. I've spent all morning practicing, but that was on like a private one. So when I came onto this, I couldn't work out why it wasn't working right, but I think I've got that sorted now. And everybody can see me in the right format. So it's all good. I'm all happy. So apologies for being a little bit late for you this afternoon. Hi, Valerie. Hi, Helen. Hi, Jane. Who have we got on there? Oh, hi, Mum. Yes, you did lose me first time, Mum, but technical issues. I wasn't quite sure what went on. Hi, Debbie. Hi, Lorraine. Hi, Suzanne. Right, looks like I've got lots of you on YouTube, which is great, which is where I should be. And Valerie, you're watching on Facebook. Oh, have I gone all echoey, Dawn? I don't know why. Is the sound okay or not? Oh no. Is anybody else finding me all echoey, or is all okay? Hi, Colleen. Yes, I did sort the gremlins, although I think I've got sound gremlins now by the sounds of things. Too lots of sound on, do I? I don't think I do. Unless I've got the sound on my computer as well as only my phone. But if I turn the computer off, I'm going to mute myself. So if I do that, you probably can't hear me. That's fine. Oh, Dawn, don't do that to me. I was echoey this morning, but I thought I got that sorted. I was on and off. Mum probably saw me on and off my own Facebook page trying to get it sorted. Okay, right, so apologies. Now I've got that sorted. Should we actually get into some crafting? Because that's what we're all here for now, isn't it? So thanks for joining me today. It's been a couple of weeks since I've been with you, actually. Or was it just been 1 week? I was away last week. So I'm just trying to get my head all back together and in the game now. So when but just before I went on holiday, the Bold Peonies was launched with Lisa on Create and Craft. That was only last Monday, if I remember right. So it's just over a week ago. This hasn't yet reached Lisa's website. That will be next week, so that's when the 2 weeks exclusivity to Create and Craft is up. But when I was doing the samples for this and showing the samples for the show, this is one of those cards, and somebody asked me if I could do a demo for this, so I thought it'd be a good one for you to show you today. It's the Bold Peonies, the collection in which we have an embossing folder and the layering stencils. There's no die in this one, but if you did want to decoupage the flower, you can see that it's large enough and a really nice shape to be able to cut out and fussy cut yourself. So there's no need for a die, but the embossing folder is so detailed that it really brings this image to life, as does all of Lisa's embossing folders, being 3D in nature. But what I wanted to show you really with this card was that I stenciled this onto a dark background. I took my idea really from the stylized design of this, being sort of Art Deco, Art Nouveau style, where the background is actually quite dark. So I just wanted to have an experiment really. Now the cardstock that I'll be using today is a little bit lighter than this, and I think it might actually work better, because when I was stenciling the greens onto this really dark green cardstock, they looked distinctive, because while they were wet, they sort of really were able to, you were able to tell the difference between the different greens, but that sort of faded a little bit as it dried. But I think going on to this lighter olive, more olive cardstock, I think we'll still be able to see the differentiation between the greens. So that was what I wanted to show. And also, obviously, the green cardstock doesn't really bode well for the green flowers. So what I wanted to do was show you that by using the newest of the inks, the matte blending ink, the Falling Snow, how effective this was at, for one, creating a base onto a dark cardstock and then adding colour over the top. Because if you can see with the flower that there are actually pink hues in the background there. So again, I think that would work really well on this more olive cardstock. When you're looking at the inks with Lisa, there are actually two. We have the premium, the opaque ink, which is a slow drying ink, which is ideal for stamping, but to actually use as a blending ink and to lighten cardstock, and the one that I actually used on this cardstock is the matte blending ink. So to create this effect and actually lighten a cardstock, or even lighten any other of your inks, you want to head for the matte blending ink, the Falling Snow. So I'm just going to bring my Ultimate in. So I'm using the Ultimate 2 because at this stage actually I don't need the stamping platform. I will do a little bit later. But these are the stencils. That's my little test piece from earlier. Let's remove that. So this set has 9 stencils as well as the embossing, the 3D embossing folder. Now they are available, or they probably will be available individually, but at the moment, until the 13th of November, which is next Monday, they are available on Create and Craft. So I'll be making a square cardstock, a square card today, a larger card. So I've already cut my card that I'm stenciling onto to size. The colours that I'm using, or the colours that I've got out, are the Rhubarb Jam, which will obviously be for the actual flower head itself, and I shall be mixing that with the Falling Snow. I have the Woodland Moss. Now, if you see the cardstock that I'm using, it's actually a very similar colour. And just to create a little bit of shading and a little bit of depth and difference between the different greens on the different layers, I've brought in the painted Eggshell, eucalyptus leaves and the Dolphin grey, and I'll use a mixture of those as we go through. So we have everything there. Hopefully that's okay there. It's a little bit dark, perhaps a bit lighter over here. And I'll do that, shall I? There we are. So let's get stenciling. Let me just line up my cardstock under my stencil like that. Don't worry, Dawn. Hi, Natalia. Oh, it's lovely to have you all here, actually. I've got the 2 lots of comments going on, so apologies if I don't get to see your comments at this stage. I shall get my head down and get stenciling for you. So we shall start off with the Woodland Moss. And I think it's quite interesting, actually, to see how this builds up, because typically if you're going to stencil on something other than white cardstock, it would be a cream or a pale blue or pale pink, lemon, etc. But it's not often that you would necessarily reach for a darker cardstock. So I shall use my brush initially and just start bringing in the Woodland Moss onto the cardstock. Now this is a really good set to practice your stenciling, but also one, it's always worth having your stencil packaging to hand just for a reference, because there are lots of different layers. There's lots of foliage in this, lots. So you want to sort of get your bearings with where you're going with this stencil. And if you're unfamiliar with it, or if it's one of the first times that you've used this, then you'll want to refer to your stencil packaging. Now, unlike most other times that I've stenciled with you, I'm actually going to be using a lot of ink, because obviously working onto a darker cardstock, we really need to make these colours shine through. Now the whole look of this finished project will be quite muted, and that is the effect that I'm after, but it doesn't mean that you can't get those distinct layers. And I wasn't quite sure when I first done this, until then I put it through the embossing folder, and then again, like most things, it all came to life. Oh, hi Peg, you found me now. It's lovely to have you here. So you can see straight away that the Woodland Moss onto this olive cardstock really does hold its own, and really is quite prominent, which is a good start. So I shall bring in stencil number 2, and just looking at it before I stencil, just sort of getting my bearings with what is on this layer. Most of it is foliage. It's the background foliage on which a lot of details will go on top, so that sort of gives me the indication that I need to go quite pale with this layer. But we have a flower sitting here, which is this one here, so I want to bear that in mind, and I shall do that a different colour in a second. So again, I shall carry on working with my Woodland Moss and just put a lighter layer on this time, lighter than that first layer that I done, and this will immediately start giving me a two-tone effect on my stenciled image. Now this is a really quite design heavy collection. What I mean by that is that Lisa has used every single part of the stencil, whereas sometimes some of the designs that we have like the posy sort of centered in the middle, and we have a lot of outside space, but this one, all the designs really do take up the whole of the stenciled image. So if you have a magnetic board, whether you have the Ultimate Tube, which you can use your magnets on, and you use a larger piece of card, it really might be worth at this stage, if you're new to stenciling, to secure your cardstock with the magnets. Or alternatively, if you have this one, the Ultimate 2, and you have the magnetic board, I think somebody was chatting in the group the other day, they'd received the magnetic board, but they couldn't remember why exactly they needed to use it. It's because the Ultimate 2, which is the one I'm using here, without the stamping platform lid, doesn't have any magnetic properties with it. But if you put that green magnetic board on there, then obviously you can use the magnets on top of that. So that gives you that option to secure your cardstock to the base. So I'll just put that layer down there. I've avoided this section here, which is where I'm going to start adding my white. So I've got a brush that is specific to my white ink pad, and you'll notice so far I've managed to keep this really clean, which was far longer than I ever imagined I would do. So you really need to go heavy with this white ink. So fortunately as well, this ink is actually able to build really quite well. So say, unlike my usual technique where I do, you know, less is more and I build up, what I really want to do with this white is build up as a heavier layer as I possibly can. I'm just checking that little bit underneath there is a leaf, so I don't need to do that. So I've put as much on as I think I can on this layer. So if I just take that away, you can start seeing this image building. So stencil number 3, we have the flowers again, but they're larger areas. So this time I really do need to come in really heavy with my white ink pad. So I've moved to my brush, and what you really do need to just persevere with this and just build up that ink really slowly. Pick up as much as you can on your brush. Don't spread it too far through your stencil, because you really want that white to pack a punch. So I don't know if you can see through the stencil there. It's a bit tricky for me to see, but I can see it while I'm working here, and you do at home if you were able to give this a go, that you really are building up that white layer, and it is a really nice buildable ink. So I've put a really good layer on there. What I might do, I'll move on to this section here and allow that bit to dry. Although these are quite quick drying, you do need that to dry a little bit, and then I can go back and add some more on. And I would say just trust the tools that you're using. The brushes are perfect. They lay down so much ink and allow those to do the work. I'm not really putting too much pressure on there, because what I don't want to do, like I did it a second ago, is just sort of move that stencil. If I go with too much force on there, then that stencil does move. So I'm just building up, and just say it's really unusual for me actually using so much ink. But we do need to really create that white base layer, which will make those flowers pop. And I'm just going to go back onto this first one again and just add more. And you'll notice the difference actually. Once the ink has dried a little bit, it enables you to layer more on top and makes that far more effective. So I can come back down onto this one again. You just give that a little bit of breathing space just to dry, because otherwise you're really just moving the ink from place to place, and you're not actually allowing it to sink into the cardstock. So I've laid down a good foundation now. I think it's probably about as much of an effect as I'm going to have at this stage, so I can concentrate now on the rest of the image. So I can come in with my Woodland moss into here, and in here also. Okay, that bit is, I'm just checking my image again. I'm going to use that as foliage there. And I think what I might do at this stage, because I'm conscious that we do need to make each of the foliage layers quite different, I'm going to come in with some painted eggshell. And what you can do, if you've left too much ink on there and you don't want to contaminate your brushes, just give that a little wipe, either with a tissue or microfiber cloth, which I actually find it works better. And you can come in with just another colour and just go around the edges and just highlight those areas. And because these are quite chalky, they layer quite nicely on top, so they will have an effect when I take this away in a second. So you can see there now, hopefully, yes you can, how much of a base that white ink has left on the cardstock. And we can start building in some shading with our other grey and blue shades there. So we have some more layers with the foliage. So I'm going to go in with the painted eggshell on this one just to make a point of difference. I'm not going to go too heavy, but if you find you don't put enough ink down first time round, you can always go back. You can always reposition your stencils at any time. So it's the beauty of using the Ultimate. It gives you that option to swap and change and just alter the levels just to make your image work the way that you want it to. So I'm just going to add highlight to these areas of foliage with the painted eggshell. I'm not going through the whole of the aperture, and I'm just concentrating putting more ink on the outsides of these images, these shapes at this stage. So we have a part of the flower again, and I am going to come in with the falling snow again, because again we won't hurt adding another layer of white on top of this. It's a smaller aperture this time, so I'm just seeing how much ink I can add with the smaller stencil brush here. I might just swap to my brush at this stage because it will make that process a lot quicker. So normally I'd use the stencil brush for these smaller areas to add a lot more ink down, but I find actually with this white that the larger wonder brushes actually do that job really well. So again, we want to just build up that layer as much as we can. We can see that flower is building. So now we have the detailing of the flower. So this is where really I want to start introducing some colour. Now you can choose whichever colour you like. I mean, the yellow would work really well, but I think just to make it look quite different, I'm using rhubarb jam, and I'm coming in with the stencil brush. I'm taking a lot of the ink off first and then just moving that onto the stencil, because I want to have it as a hint of pink as opposed to a real solid colour. And it just now enables me just some control over the ink that I'm using, because I will eventually use all of the ink. You can see that that ink is moving from that stencil material to the apertures there. So we've got the buds, so I should perhaps put some concentrated colour into that. And then I'm just going to work around the outside of the flower also. Perhaps concentrate putting a little bit more ink on the tips of the petals there, just to make them stand out. And this also will add the detail, all this really fine detail that Lisa's added through the stencil. The rhubarb jam, this pink ink, will actually really make that look pretty. So make sure. And you'll be surprised actually that using inks like this onto a darker cardstock, you'll be surprised at the effect it will have just by using that white on the base. It doesn't have to be onto a green cardstock, it will have that same effect on any colour, even on a paler cardstock as well. And perhaps if there are areas that you've gone slightly heavy with your ink on other projects, even on a white cardstock, you can use this white ink just to tone it down a little bit, and it will just give it that real nice chalky effect. It's definitely worth a try, because if it means you either are disheartened with your project and you think you've ruined it by adding too much ink, just try adding a little bit of white over the top just to lighten it. I think you may be surprised at the outcome. So I've added the pink on there. There's a tiny bit of flower here that hasn't been caught with the white ink on other stencils. So I'm just going to add the white as the base there initially. Okay. And then I can just come in, just add a little bit of pink over the top just to make that consistent with the rest of the flower. Perhaps put a little bit of darker veining up through the top there. And before I move, I think I might use a bit of the Dolphin Grey and just add that into these corner elements here, which is where there's a little bit more foliage. So I'll just add that into there, like so. When you take that away, you can see now just how pretty and just how much of that pink ink really does show. And if I, hopefully you can see that, but if I just lift that gently, you can see that the green underneath the pink and the white really hasn't made a difference to the effect of that rhubarb jam at all. So what we will do now, there are still elements of flower on here. Obviously we want to add pink to that. So to do that and just keep that consistent, I am going to add the white base first. And hopefully you can see, say in between me moving the stencils, is that it really makes those flowers pop to the front, which you wouldn't have thought was necessarily possible on such a dark cardstock. So I'm just referring to my packaging here. We have part of a flower here and part of a leaf here. So let's make sure I put the white ink on the right place. We have some flower up here as well. So I think it's I like the fact that Lisa really thought about her packaging right from the very beginning. So when it comes through to elements like this, where we do keep our stencils in the packaging and we're not tempted to throw the packaging away, it really is a really good reference point, and it's such a good starting point for anybody who might be new to the system as well. And if you ever get stuck on what colours to choose, then there's always plenty of help in the group, and there's lots of YouTube channels, YouTube videos that Lisa has done, and also myself and Dawn have done. Natalia pops quick little reels as well on to Facebook, which are really good reference points. So I shall do that, and I shall add some more foliage colour in here. Now, because this is a stylised design, I'm really quite happy using greys and blues for the foliage. It acts as a shadow, but it really makes your image look quite different. So don't always be stuck with foliage using just greens. Use your greys and your blues over the greens to add shadow, and that really adds some depth to what you're doing. Okay, so that's coming together really nicely. We haven't added an awful lot of detail at the moment. This is coming in the next 2 stencils. So really we are just focusing on the flowers, and you can look how pretty that bud is there. And so we can add some more detail now to our flowers. Come in with the pink, and I think I might go quite dark around the buds on this one. We have a little bit of a flower going on there, so I shall add a little bit of pink on that one, and also in the centre here. Now I'm concentrating a lot of the ink just along one side of this aperture and just smoothing that up towards the outer edge, so that still gives me that element of an airbrushed look, which is what I'd like to achieve on all of the stenciling that I do, and that is no different even working on this coloured cardstock. So here we have another area of flower, and I'm just going to concentrate the ink on the base of that bud and just brush that up slowly and just gently. So most of the ink is sitting here, and I'm just using any residual ink off the stencil from the brush towards the top of that bud there, and I think that will work really well. And I might actually put a little bit more in there. I shall come in with something a little bit different this time. The painted eggshell into these foliage areas. Again, I shall concentrate a lot of the ink towards the base of the leaf, because that really does just give an amount of shading. It makes it so much easier to create sort of graduated looks. So that's worked really well, and I shall use this bit here on there. This is one of those collections actually so abstract that it comes together right at the very last minute, and it's such a detailed design. I think if you already have this or you're waiting to get it, I think you'll be super pleased with the effect that you can get from this. So now this is a really detailed stencil. You can see where we're going with this, so we can really start adding some shading into those leaves, where I can start introducing different colours, and also I can finish off the pink on the flowers here. So a lot of ink, and I'm just going to put that around the outside. That will add me some shading, and then I can take that up to the top of that flower just like that, and use whatever ink is left just on the rest of that flower there, because you put the majority of it around the outside, so that concentration of ink won't change now. So that will probably be just enough. So now I'm going to use a combination of the Dolphin Grey and painted eggshell, just to start adding some shading into the rest of these leaves. This Dolphin Grey actually works so well. I did experiment actually with cobblestones, but the undertones of this Dolphin Grey are quite, I would say, quite mushroomy. So I think that muted sort of undertone, mushroomy overtone, works so well with these olive colours. Again, it's all because I'm using this olive undertone. If you were using any other sets of colours, perhaps fresher colours, then the cobblestones would work as well. So just experiment before you sort of get really down into the sort of the nitty-gritty of the detail of these stencils. What you can do, just take yourself a piece of cardstock that you're stenciling onto and just swatch out the colours. You'll see this one here is the Dolphin Grey. This one is the cobblestones, and that was just a little bit too stark for me, that one, whereas the Dolphin Grey really did sort of blend into the tones a lot more. So that's always worth doing, and it gives you a good reference point as well. And again, the more that you then use these colours, you'll get more familiar with them, so then you'll have the confidence to reach for perhaps the right ones quicker. Particularly if you're wanting to make a quick card. I know whenever I actually start a project, what takes me the longest is choosing the colours that I'm going to use. For one, because there's so many, and two, I have to get it just right. So now what I could have done really is used a larger brush, but I wanted to add concentrated areas of colour through these stencils, as opposed to a nice blend of colours. Hopefully in a second, when I take this away, that has actually worked out. So let's just move that. Ah, yeah, look, you can see now that is just transformed completely. And that's come together really nicely. And actually using that lighter colour, it's actually far more prominent on that than it is on this darker one. So I'm really pleased I chose this colour. So this last stencil is really just those final details. And you can see through the stencil where the flower is and obviously where the foliage is. So we want to put the accents in the right colours in the right places. So we can see that the flower is here. So I'm going to come in really heavy with the rhubarb jam. So we have those accents on the flower being pink. So that will all tie in nicely. Okay. And we have a little flower up here. So I'm really going heavy with the ink, so much heavier than I would normally do. But I think it's definitely warranted on this. So that's the flower done. And then we want to come in. You'll notice actually I haven't used the eucalyptus leaves. I haven't felt the need to at this stage. I think what I might do actually is do the accents in Woodland moss. If it doesn't quite work out, we can always come back in and try again with a different colour. Because I really do want them to blend in, but be there, if you know what I mean. Sometimes accents are most effective when they're barely noticeable, but if they're not there, you miss them. I don't know if that makes sense. So really heavy woodland moss through those. And now we have the moment of truth where we take that away. Fingers crossed it looks okay. Yeah, there we are. Actually, I really like how that's come out. You can see the accents on the flowers. They're just blended in really nicely. And the woodland moss, I think, actually works really well. So, actually, there's an element looking at where I added the Dolphin grey. It's taken a slightly pink hue purely because it's sitting next to pink. And I think that has actually worked out really, really nicely. So, Carol, you told yourself you didn't need any more florals. I know, I'm sorry. But look, this is all about having options. You know, Lisa carries the designs on her website for a good while. So there's no particular rush to go out and get these. It's just really nice to be able to show you how these images can be used in different ways. So I'd be really, really happy to put that directly onto a card. I have my matte layer already. I'm using slightly different colourway, so I could put that straight onto the matte layer, and I think that that would look stunning. Let me just bring my card in. I've already created those, so we can add that like that. But obviously, we do have an embossing folder, and this is just going to take it to another level. So we have to emboss it, really, don't we? And it's so easy to line up. Because it is so intricate and because they have so many design details in this particular collection, it makes it an awful lot easier actually to line all of those details up in your embossing folder. And if you just, let me just make sure that that is absolutely right. So if you just bear with me a second, I'll get this embossed. Okay, I should bring this in. I actually thought that would take me longer to stencil than it actually did, because it is sort of time consuming considering you're working on to a darker cardstock. So we can take that away. The emboss on that, I think, really does do those colours justice, and it makes that flower head, that mini flower head, really stand out. And hopefully you can see that if you did want to decoupage this and you wanted to stencil it a second time, you can just stencil the flower area, and it'd be so easy just to take a pair of small scissors and just snip around that, and then you'd be able to decoupage that and create a 3D image. But I do like it just as it is. So now we can just finish that off by adding that to our cardstock, or our card blank there. Now, just before I do that, I've done most of the mats and layers for this. So I've used a slightly paler green than what I've stenciled on, matted it in grey. I've used one of the layers from the nested stitched bubbles to cut my white layer, and just matted and layered that freehand onto grey cardstock again. And I'm going to use 3D foam to mount that. Now, I wanted to show you a little trick with this, because the 3D foam I have, it just comes in these on a roll, like Lisa sells in her shop. But there are lots of individual ones, and it will take me forever to put all of those individual ones and take all the tabs off. So what I thought I'd show you to do, I've just taken a length that I know that fits. Instead of pulling off each individual square, putting it down and then taking off the individual tabs, the way to do this is to lay it on the ground or on the table, take off the individual tabs now, because all of the individual squares are still held on the base. So I'll show you that. I've taken all the tabs off. So all of these are sticking now, but they've held by that single strip which holds them all together. Now that basically is a single strip of foam pads. So when I can lay that onto the back of my cardstock, instead of taking all the individual tabs off, which would be very boring for you, I can just take off these strips individually. So you would never know the difference at this stage whether you actually cut a strip of 3D foam or used lots of these individual ones. Now, it's meant to be easy. Oh, there we are. So I can just take that off of there and take that off of there. So hopefully that's a nifty little trick for you to use, particularly if you want to use lots and you haven't got a huge amount of time. So now I can lay that onto there, and I can use my glue to add my stenciled. Now, just before actually I put this down, you can see just how beautiful the embossing is, even on the reverse, and that I would even use myself. It's like a really expensive wallpaper, sort of flocked. I think that even on a coloured cardstock, I think that is beautiful as it is. But obviously we've done all this lovely stenciling, so let's show that off so I can add that onto there. That looks lovely. Now, I think just a simple sentiment on the front to there is all we need to do. And I've used the Build a Sentiment collection. So we have a set of stamps and dies. These larger words have stamps and dies to go with them. The smaller sentiments are just stamps, but obviously being smaller, much easier to cut out or trim. And I've stamped this, and I've stamped it so there's a two-tone, so just give it a little bit of interest, and I'll show you how I've done that. So this time I am using my ultimate one, which is the stamping platform. I've used the same colour cardstock as I've used on the mount of my card, taking the wishes stamp, and I'm just holding that down in place with my magnets there. So if I can position my stamp and pick that up with the with the platform. Now what I wanted to do, I wanted to have the sentiment there, but I didn't want it to be too bold, so I've actually stamped it in the green Woodland Moss. Now you can use the pigment ink or the dye ink that Lisa has, but as I've got these matte blending inks out, I just wanted to show you can actually stamp with these as well. It will take a couple of goes just to give yourself a really nice smooth stamp, but obviously with the stamping platform you've got that option. So I'm stamping that with the Woodland Moss, the majority of it. The bottoms of the S's there haven't caught, but what I wanted to do is come in with the Dolphin Grey, and instead I won't ink the whole of the stamp, the whole of the word stamp. I'm just going to catch the bottom of each of the letters. So I'm just holding the stamp pad at an angle and I'm just brushing upwards. So I am literally just catching the bottom of that stamp. I'm just catching the bottom of each of those letters, and I should just stamp that down. And if anything hasn't caught again, obviously you just go straight back in. So I just make sure that those S's catch. So now we have the wishes has been stamped, and it's dry in a nice chalky effect that is actually showing as a two-tone in the same tones that we've stenciled in, so it all ties in really nicely. Then obviously I've used the die and I've cut that out. So we can put that to one side. So this will sit on there. It tones in really nicely. I like to have sentiments. You could use happy birthday, but I chose wishes mainly because it didn't cover too much of the flower that I've just stenciled. I didn't want to go to all of that effort and creating a beautiful flower and then covering it all over. So I'm just going to use 3D foam on this. So I'll just take some scissors and snip my foam in half, so I can add that to the back of the word. Fortunately, there's enough area on this word to add foam pads, or the probably easiest thing to do would be to use gel glue, but I don't get on particularly well with that. It always dries on me. So I'm going to use my 3D foam, just to make sure I add that in a way that can't be seen. And obviously we want to make sure that all areas of that word is supported, otherwise it all gets a little bit bendy and unruly. So there we are. So I'll just add that onto the back of there. So fortunately, the time that I saved adding all of those foam pads to the back of my layer there, I can now use with this little fiddly job for you, which, there we go. So we can add wishes just there. And I've also used a sticker and just mounted that onto a piece of solid cardstock and added some 3D foam to the back and cut that down so we can have that sitting there. Because with this sort of card, I quite like it to be something where the sentiment is there but subtle in the background, so we can have that sitting like so. So there we are. We have two cards. Same technique on both of them. They've both turned out very differently, and I equally actually like the both. I like the fact that I've added more pink on this one, but the white on this darker one is far more prominent. but hopefully it shows you that you can use your white ink pad as an accessory, and don't be put off by stamping onto a different colour cardstock, because the effects that you get from that are just so different. Yeah, I just think it's a really nice technique to be able to use, and I like the fact that I've used the greens on this as well, actually. So thank you so much for joining me today. I hope, actually, with the fact that we are on YouTube and Facebook now, means that we can reach a lot more people, and hopefully it's all watchable for you. Apologies for the technical issues at the beginning. I'll be sorted for my lives next week now, so I know I know the pitfalls to look for. Hopefully the sound has been okay for you too. Thanks so much for joining me today. I'm with you just for today this week. Lisa has the one day special with you tomorrow, which is the lovely ruffled lace set, which is so pretty. Again, that can be used in so many different ways, as has been shown in the group and all the design team samples. There'll be a live from Dawn on Thursday, and Lisa will be live with you again on Friday evening. So I've really enjoyed that being with you this afternoon. Thanks so much for joining me, and I shall see you again next week. Take care.